Yo, what up, fellas? Here today to look over some Maple Leafs Puckpedia rosters here with my brother Charlie.
It's good, gentlemen.
Figured it's that time of year where the Leafs choke, so we might as well look over some rosters for what they do this offseason to kind of bounce back just to choke again next year. Big offseason for them with Mitch Marner and Tavares coming up as free agents, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that and kind of what Leafs fans think they should do. I think the popular opinion is let Marner walk and maybe re-sign Tavares for cheap if they can. But yeah, I do think that Marner's gone because there are a lot of teams that will pay a lot of money for him.
Yeah, a lot of speculation with teams like Boston Bruins or the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Two teams that have a lot of cap space and will be looking to make a big change as they're both rebuilding.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
I think it'd be a good face for either of those
I
franchises.
think Bedsy could use a wingman too.
For sure.
All right, so first roster we got here to look at, made by Madeline27. No title. So first move he makes, which seems to be a pretty popular move on all these Leafs rosters, is signing Sam Bennett. So he signs him $7.5 million for 7 years. Sam Bennett's like 28 years old already, so signing him for that much for 7 years is definitely a bit of a gamble.
I was about to say, yeah, it definitely is a hefty contract, and on top of that, I do think something that Sam Bennett could bring to the Toronto roster is that he's a gritty guy. He's a great playoff player, and I think Leafs have really been lacking a player like that these past 5, 6, 7, 8 years even.
Yeah.
Going into the playoffs because, they got Marner's, Matthews, and Nylander who are kind of showmen, but these guys aren't producing. They need a Brady Tkachuk type of player to light things up in the playoffs.
Yes, sir. So sign him for $7.5 million for 7 years. Because he is a UFA, whoever gets him is going to have to overpay for him. So, if you're the Leafs and you got a lot of money coming off the books with Tavares and Marner, you might as well make a splash. So I think going for Bennett's not a terrible idea. And like Charlie said, they need that grit and sandpaper for the playoffs. And I think Bennett's like the perfect guy for that. So Bennett, $7.5 million for 7 years. A little bit of an overpay, but it's a necessary one. I don't hate it. Then
it's a solid second line center, add to their depth as well. So
it's true.
A place for Tavares or if he ends up walking.
Next move, sign RFA Matty Nyes 8x8. I like it. I think that's pretty cost efficient for Nyes, just because with the cap going up over the next handful of years, I think by the end of this deal, it'll be great. Nyes is projecting to look like a pretty good player, so I definitely don't hate this deal at all. Next, they signed Ehlers, $8.5 million for 7 years, giving out a lot of hefty contracts here in this roster, which is probably, going to put them right back in cap hell, which is where they've been for a while, which is, probably a reason they haven't been as successful as they hope because they don't have the money to pay the depth, defense, or goaltending because they're too top heavy. So this might just throw you back in that same predicament. I don't hate the deal for Ehlers, but kind of like Bennett, he's getting towards 30, and it's a long time, a lot of money. So $8.5 million.
29-year-old, that is a lot of years. So gotta be careful with something like that.
But if you're gonna get him, you gotta overpay for him. So if that's your guy to replace Marner, then so be it. But if this guy keeps Matthews, you already have a sniper in Matthews. I don't really see the point in overpaying for another sniper in Ehlers. I think maybe more of a Brock Besser could be a move here, probably for that same cap hit or similar at least. But yeah, let's just see what this roster looks like after we look over these.
If Toronto Maple Leafs are able to make these additions is that they will be going from a very top-heavy team to a more balanced-out in-depth team, which I think is something that they have been lacking. The third, fourth line haven't been producing much, and even their first line hasn't, so I don't think it's a bad idea to switch it up at all.
Well, let's see the rest of these moves he made and see how this depth actually looks. So sign Brandon Tanev, $1.33 million for 3 years. Honestly, I think you'd have to pay him a little bit more than that. I think that might be too cheap and probably for too long, too, if you're Toronto. I get that his brother's here, but he's 33. Like, you really want to sign Brandon Tanev for your, third, fourth line until he's 36. I think Tanev will probably go for more around $2 million for 1 or 2 years somewhere. but I do think the Leafs could be a good landing spot for him, and I think he'd be inclined to sign there with Chris Tanev already there. Next piece of business, sign Alex Steves, prospect. He'll probably be on the Marlies again for at least another year. If he was even there last year, I'm not totally sure. After that, sign Eric Robinson, $2.25 million for 4 years. It's a bit of a hefty contract for a guy who's relatively unproven. I think he's been good for Carolina so far in these playoffs. He's only 29 years old, undrafted guy, so he's got that hunger. He's got stuff to prove.
32 points in 82 games with Carolina Hurricanes there, which is not bad production from a bottom 6 player.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that could be a good solid addition for the Leafs, but you'd be signed till he's like 33. But with the cap going up, honestly, I think that is a pretty fair AAV as long as he keeps up that same level of production. Final sign Pontus Holmberg, re-sign him for 1 year for $1.2 million. That's fine. I think that's good. Depth guy is not going to move the needle too much, but yeah, keep him around. So on to the trades that he made. So looks like he did a lot of cap dumps, trade Camp and Yarncroke, and attach a pick to both of them to get rid of them. I could see Pittsburgh definitely taking a cap dump. Dubas has openly said that the Penguins will be taking on a cap dump, like a Kevin Hayes trade like they did last summer. So maybe Yarncroke is a guy that, they could take on for a pick. Maybe they'd ask for more than a 6th just because a pick that late in the draft isn't really going to do much. It's kind of just a coin flip at that point. Kind of same thing with Kampf and Columbus. Maybe Columbus could use the depth, but it also depends how aggressive they're going to be, in free agency and in trading, and how they approach trying to be competitive or not next year. The big move that kind of piqued my eye here was the one for Zacha. Toronto gets Zacha in exchange for Max Domi, Bobby McMahon, and a 2nd. I think it's a good trade. I think it's pretty realistic. I think Zacha's only got a year or 2 left on his deal. He's got 2 years left. So they get Domi and McMahon, who's a young player, and a 2nd. And I think the Bruins need some depth right now, especially down the middle, which is, I guess getting rid of Zacha kind of hurts your center depth, but you also have Domi who could slot in there. And I don't think the Bruins are going to be competitive again this coming year. So I think this is a move they do. They get a pick, some futures. I don't think it's a bad one at all. And the last trade Nick Robertson for a 2nd.
So I'm going to say something about this one. I'm not a big fan about it. I think Nick Robertson is a very talented young centerman / left winger. And I think that he could prove to be very beneficial in the future of this Leafs roster. He's also a young guy. We've seen what his brother has done, some amazing things at a young age as well. So I think holding on to Nick Robertson for a couple more years would be ideal for the Leafs instead of giving him up for a 2nd rounder.
I disagree.
Really?
I think they move on from him.
Why is that?
I just don't think he fits their window. I'm not going to lie. And he hasn't done anything in Toronto.
He hasn't, but
and maybe that's because, he
hasn't had the opportunities either.
Well, exactly. And he's not going to really get it with this current roster. I think shipping him off to a team like San Jose, who's rebuilding, wants younger pieces, that'd probably be better for his development and more beneficial for the Leafs. You would have to pay him too. But I also don't think you're getting a 2nd for him, if we're being real. Yes, it's a late 2nd because it's the Avs 2nd, but either way, I think maybe a 3rd would be more realistic for him, or even like a later pick in a prospect or something.
I don't hate this for a young guy. Yeah, he's 23, but he hasn't had too much time in the NHL yet. So, you're basically, if you are able to get a 2nd out of that, you're basically just getting back what you put in for him. So, and it's a tough decision here, but I can see both sides of the trade. And I do think that maybe retaining him for another year or 2 could be beneficial for the franchise. It's just my opinion, though.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with him this offseason. So, based on all these moves, looking at the final roster, you slot Easton Cowan up on the first line. I think eventually he'll be good enough to be there. But, as a rookie, who knows? But maybe playing with Matthews and Nyes will help with that. Overall, it's a good first line. Then having Bennett, Ehlers, and Nylander on your 2nd line, that's probably one of the best 2nd lines in the league. Even one of the best top 6s in the league if you pull this off. Forward depth looks pretty good too. I mean, Zaka as your 3C is pretty good. Maybe a bit of a hefty cap hit for a third line center. But then I think your bottom 6 wingers are kind of weak. I mean, Robinson, I mean, I don't really know how much he'll bring to the table. Steves is going to be a rookie, 25 years old. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he can actually produce and maintain a bottom 6 role on the NHL roster if he gets sent back down. And then, I mean, Tanev, he's kind of just a grit guy. He's not going to put up points, but, he's got a motor. Forechecks hard.
Big guy for the penalty kill as well.
Yeah, and he'll lay some hits. Same with Lawton.
Block some shots.
I mean, kind of crazy they gave up a first-rounder for Lawton just for him to, not be that good in his time with the Leafs so far and probably ultimately just end up on the 4th line. And then, again, Holmberg, not much of a needle mover. Reeves is also a guy I could see them cap dumping. Just because, I mean, if especially if they're really cap strapped, you don't really need Reeves on your roster at that AAV at that age too. So yeah. And then defense, I mean, he didn't make any changes to the defense here. I think the Leafs D-core this past year was pretty good, probably the best it's been in the Matthews, Marner, Nylander era. So I've seen a lot of moves with Morgan Riley leaving the Leafs on these rosters, but I don't think they'll actually do that. I think he just had a down year and that they haven't fully given up on him yet, but we'll see. And then goaltending also stays the same. So I think both of those guys kind of overperformed this year. I don't think they're as good as people think they are. But honestly, there's no real goalie on the market right now other than maybe like John Gibson, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. So shall we move on to the next roster here?
Let's do it. Who plays down the middle? So yeah, I mean, with Tavares coming off the books, maybe you got to find a new 2C. Although it looks like this guy did re-sign Tavares in his roster, so nice to an 8x8, just like the last roster. Again, I think that's a good signing. I think that'll turn out well for you if you're the Leafs a few years down the line. Even now, I think he's worth that. So yeah, Luke Kunin, I mean, just be a bottom 6 guy for a couple of years. Decent AAV for him and what he'll bring. Tavares, $4 million for 3 years. I don't know if he'll take that much of a discount to stay with Toronto. I mean, you never really know because it is his hometown team. So, maybe he would be willing to take that, but
there is that aspect, but he is also getting older without a cup, and he might want to switch that up and go to another team, try and chase a ring before his career's over.
Yeah, and I do think other teams would offer him more money than that.
Yeah,
I think he could get upwards of like $6 million from other teams. So it kind of depends on how Tavares wants to approach the whole thing. Next move, Sam Bennett, 8.5 for 7 years. I mean, like I said on the last roster, you got to overpay for him because he's a UFA, and Toronto, it's a very high pressure environment to play in. So I think part of what you pay guys is to deal with that pressure, which the last core, current core, couldn't handle. So bringing in Bennett, I think he's a guy who could handle that, especially a lot better than like Marner, stuff like that. But that is a pretty high cap hit for a long time for his age and the type of player he is. I wouldn't be surprised if down the line he has to deal with some injuries because of his physical play style. But that's just something you can't really predict. Next signing, Brad Marchand, $4.5 million for 3 years. If you can't beat him, join him, right? Bring him in. Might as well.
Hey, man, Bennett, I mean, I think that's took the idea that this roster has is that they've seen the Leafs get their ass kicked by Florida a couple times now in the playoffs, and they're seeing that they don't have gritty guys like Marchand or Bennett. So I think adding those 2 guys could give them an advantage that they've been missing heavily in these past couple of years.
And I mean, both of those guys live rent-free in Leafs fans' heads. So, maybe it'd be nice for Leafs fans to finally get them on their side for once. And I think a combo of these 2 guys would be really good in playoffs, especially if you have them on the same line. Next signing, Tanner Jeannot, $1.8 million for 2 years. I think that's a pretty solid 4th line signing. Probably not going to put up a ton in terms of points, but I think he'll play a good defensive game with some PK and physicality, which is kind of what the Leafs are lacking. Bring back Lorentz for 2 years at $1 million. That's pretty fair AAV for him, I think. Maybe even a little bit of an underpay. You might have to give him a little bit more than that, just depending on what the market is for him in free agency. Jeff Petrie, $950K for 1 year. I mean, just defensive depth. He'll probably be the 7th D-man on this roster unless there's other trades around the defense. And then bring back Pacioretty, 1 year, same deal as Petrie, $950K. I mean, Pacioretty played great these playoffs for the Leafs. He was one of the few guys who I think kind of showed up throughout the whole playoffs. But yeah, I think maybe he could get a little bit more money, but maybe he also takes a cut to stay with the Leafs. And maybe teams don't even offer him any more than that just because of his age at this point, and his long injury history. So hard to say. Onto the trades. Just like the last guy, I mean, dumping Yarncroke and Kampf, except he thinks the Leafs can get assets in return for them. Maybe you can, depending on what team you trade them to. And, if it's a team that needs depth and is willing to pay for it. But, I mean, Philly and Utah, these aren't teams who are, cup contenders or even playoff contenders. They're more wild card bubble teams. At least Utah is. I don't even think Philly is. I think Philly is going to have another year of tanking. So I don't see why they would pay to take Kampf. Doesn't really make sense to me. I think it'd be the opposite. The Leafs would have to attach a pick to send Kampf to Philly. But again, maybe if they send him to another team would pay assets for them. Probably late picks like this, but we'll see. But the interesting trade here, the blockbuster, Jonathan Marchessault and a 5th to the Leafs for Morgan Riley, Nick Robertson, and a 3rd. I think Nashville does this in a heartbeat if this comes across Barry Trotz's table. I mean, you get a defenseman. Nashville's defense is pretty weak outside of Yossi and Shea's overpaid. Riley can maybe benefit from a change of scenery, although I don't know if Nashville in their current state would be the right change of scenery for him. Also, maybe he has an NMC. It's possible.
I mean, again, with the San Jose take about Nick Robertson, that would be a good place for him to develop in a not so good roster where he could potentially get more minutes and find his groove in the NHL.
Yeah, and it looks like Riley has a full NMC, so he's only going there if he wants to. If he waives his NMC to get traded to Nashville, but I think this is a great return for Nashville. If you're the Leafs, though, I don't really know how I feel about this. Marchessault's old. He's signed till he's like 38. His cap hit's not exactly terrible, and I think you could still get a couple productive years out of him. I just kind of question about how this deal is going to age and if, that's something the Leafs want to take on. And you are kind of giving up a lot for him here. Riley, Robertson, and a 3rd. I mean,
that is a lot. And on top of that, you're not adding anything to your decor in these trades. So you're losing one of your top defensemen as well.
Right, and it's not like they signed a defenseman yet. Yeah. I mean, they signed Petrie, but Petrie's going to be like 37 or 38.
As a Penguins fan, I'm not a fan of Petrie at all. So that guy shit the bed for us. I mean, we've seen him do it in numerous different places like Montreal as well. So
yeah, but
I don't think that would be the best signing.
Yeah, but we'll just chalk that up to a Hextall blunder.
Yeah.
So after all these moves, what this roster would look like is first line, Nyes, Matthews, Marchessault. Second line, Domi, Bennett, Nylander. I mean, you keep, Matthews and Nylander. I think those are good pieces to kind of build a team around. I think slotting in Bennett in between Domi and Nylander could, be a good line, especially in the playoffs. I don't know if Marchessault will have first-line production at this stage in his career. It's possible, but I don't know. Have JT on the 3rd line with McMahon and Marchand. I mean, McMahon's a good piece. I think he's got a good motor. He forechecks hard, kind of gets to the dirty areas. Won't put up a ton of points, but he will be productive. And I think especially if you put him on a line with a guy like Tavares and Marchand, I mean, that'll help his production more, just because those guys are experienced vets who can still put up numbers. And McMahon and Marchand do kind of play a similar style, a get-in-your-face type of game. And then 4th line, Jeannot, Lawton, Kunin. I mean, it's a good 4th line. You're not paying too much for any of them. I think that just kind of is what it is. It could be a good 4th line come playoff time. But the defense, I think, so getting rid of Riley does leave a hole in the defense. Leaves them with McCabe, Chris Tanev, Ekman Larson, Carlo, Benoit, and Ben Danford, 19-year-old prospect. Picked in the first round last year, or 2 years ago now. Or no, last year. Right?
Last year.
Yeah, last year.
2024.
Second to last pick of the first round. So basically an early second round pick. Is he NHL ready? I don't know. That's just something I think, Leafs fans and, other people would know better than me. So maybe, drop a comment down below. Let us know if Ben Danford's NHL ready.
Kid is young, I'll tell you that, man. I'm looking at it. He's just 3 months older than me. It's just kind of crazy to me, but
yeah. But, I think defensemen do take longer to develop. So I think maybe putting a 19-year-old in for the Leafs is a little ambitious, especially if you want to win a cup.
On top, this is Riley's replacement, so
Mhm.
I mean, it is definitely very risky.
And I mean, that decor's getting old, man. Chris Tanev's 35, Ekman Larson's 33. I mean, they add one by next year to all these ages. I mean, McCabe will be 32, Larson 34, Tanev 36 next year. That's an old decor. I mean, and I kind of question the long-term sustainability of it. And I think keeping a guy like Riley around for a few more years could be a good placeholder. Maybe only trade him if you find a guy who can actually replace him.
I will come out here and say that, I understand losing Marner as he's very expensive, and having the cap to re-sign him plus or all their other holes would definitely not be beneficial. But I do think that just trying to replace Marner by guys that are older than him and not as skilled, plus losing assets to the decor overall, would be negative to this roster, and we wouldn't see much change from being a first round or second round exit with this current roster here. I feel like there's other rosters in the Eastern Conference and specifically Atlantic that are very competitive teams, and I just do not see Leafs with this roster here making it further than they have been.
Yeah, not even with Bennett or Marchand.
I mean, I like the offensive additions, but I think they lack defensively. And as you said earlier, you think that the Leafs goaltending tandem kind of peaked this year with where they're at. So
that too, yeah. I mean, Stoller's is going to be 32 next year. I mean,
I did not realize he was that old.
Me neither, but he has been around for a while. But career backup goalie. Yeah, and then Petrie, Lawrence, Pacioretty as your extras. I mean, yeah, I guess it's not a bad rotation of extra forwards you could slot in with Lawrence and Pacioretty. I think they're both guys who could hold their own in the NHL lineup, and at least Pacioretty could play up and down. So yeah, it leaves them a few options. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how good this team would be. I think it adds what the Leafs are lacking, which is grit. But I just question the defense and the goaltending, and how that'll hold up come playoff time, because you're not going to win a cup with only forwards. You kind of need a whole team. So yeah. So the final roster, ushering in a new era of Leafs hockey. Maybe getting rid of the core four, or at least some of them.
Oh, it's a big one. Holy shit.
Yeah. Again, Matty Nyes 8x8. That seems to kind of be a common theme here with all these Nye signings. 8x8 is his fair market value. I don't disagree at all. Maybe he signs a bridge deal because he thinks he could get more in the future, but we'll see. I think it would be in the Leafs' best interest to lock him up for as long as possible right now. And again, $8 million down the line probably won't be as much as it is now. So.
With cap going up, yeah, I feel like that's a pretty solid deal. Plus, you get him long term. There's not really any negative to that unless he just underperforms.
Right. And Lawrence, again, $1 million for 2 years. It's fine, solid forward depth signing. Probably play on your fourth line or be an extra. Tavares, $5.5 million by 3. I think maybe that's probably more realistic if he stays with the Leafs than the last guy who said $4 million by 3. But again, maybe he could sign for 7 somewhere else. So kind of hard to say. But also, you're kind of just bringing back what hasn't worked already for like 8-7 years. So I don't know.
It's a gamble play for sure.
It is. Kind of depends what they do around this. Noah Cates, I'm pretty sure he's an RFA, so there's probably a trade for him down here that we can look into. $3.25 million for 4 years. I think that's good for him. Maybe a little bit of underpay. Maybe he'll ask for more for that much term, but I don't think Noah Cates will ever be more than a solid middle six guy. And on a good team, he'll probably be a third line winger. So I think that's fair. I think it's good. I think it'd be good value for the Leafs. Maybe it'd be a little bit more money. But yeah, we'll see. Elmer Soderblom, pretty sure he's an RFA with Detroit. Signed him 1.9 mil for 2 years.
I don't mind that deal.
Young guy, solid fourth line piece. He's big. He's like 6'7" or something. I'm pretty sure. So I don't hate that. Marchand, 7.75 mil for 2 years. It's a lot of money. But I think for a short-term deal, that could be worth it, especially if Marchand can kind of maintain the same level of production that he's been putting up. So that'll kind of be interesting to see. And again, I think the Leafs fans love Marchand just because they can't beat him, and I think he is exactly the style of player that they kind of need. So I don't hate this deal. Maybe a little bit too much money, but also if you want to get him, you got to kind of pay him what he thinks he's worth or what he wants to go there. Brandon Tanev, 2 mil for 3 years. I think that's more like it. Again, though, 3 years might be a little too long. I don't really like signing guys, especially bottom sixers, till they're like 36. But you never know. I mean, he works hard. I mean, as a Penguins fan, I watched Tanev for a few years, so I think he's a guy with a motor, forechecks hard, good PK, and physicality, which is exactly what the Leafs need. So, and then Bowen Byram, I assume they trade for his RFA rights, 6.75 mil for 7 years. I think that is a pretty fair deal for Byram, especially if you want to lock him up long term. But I think let's see what they traded for him. Okay, so they trade for Sandin Pellikka, and then end up flipping him to Buffalo with Yarncroke for Byram. I could maybe see Buffalo doing that, but again, that kind of puts them back. That kind of resets the timeline on their rebuild, which I don't really know if they want to be taking steps back at the moment. But also, they do kind of need to get rid of him because they do have that log jam on their right side, I believe it is, left side. So yeah, maybe trading him for a top defensive prospect in the league, I'd say, and a second and a depth piece, maybe not the worst thing. Although Yarncroke is kind of more just a cap dump for the Leafs, but I don't think it hurts Buffalo to take him on. So they trade him, and then they trade for him, and then they sign to that. I think that's a good deal all around. Good piece of business by the Leafs if they do that. But I also think there will be a lot more teams in on Byram who can maybe have more to offer, just because of how young he is. And there's a lot of teams in a rebuild state right now who a guy like Byram could help. But for the trades, so yeah, Sandin Pellikka and Soderblom, a second and a fourth to the Leafs for Riley, Topi Niemela, and a sixth.
No, I like that a lot for the Leafs. The question I feel like there is just, would Detroit accept that more so?
At this point, I bet they're desperate, or at least Stevie Y is desperate. It's been how many years now that they've been rebuilding? He's probably on the hot seat, and I think making a move like this to get a guy like Riley who could probably slot in on your top pair, at least your second pair, and help them win now versus having to wait for Sandin to fully develop. And I don't know. I think, yeah, it's a great trade for both sides, probably, especially if flipping Sandin for Byram is what they do. I don't know how realistic it is, but I think it's probably a fair deal for both sides. The Leafs get the additional picks too that they'll probably end up flipping in another trade. So, yeah, next trade, David Kampf, Nick Robertson to the Penguins for Sam Poulin and a fifth. I think that's a fair deal. I think the Penguins would do it. Sam Poulin is probably not an NHL player at this point.
Feels like he's been developing forever now.
Yeah.
With Wilkes-Barre, and nothing's really come of it. He's gotten some NHL minutes, didn't really do anything with them. So
can't really crack the lineup and be a mainstay in there.
I think Penguins
maybe
definitely
next year,
trade.
though. Yeah. I mean, sending a fifth to Toronto, I don't know. I mean, like, they're dumping Kampf. It's not like the Penguins are getting an asset by taking on Kampf. I see it more as the Penguins get Robertson in exchange for taking on Kampf's contract, a fifth, and Poulin. I think all of that is kind of the return for Robertson. I think the Penguins wouldn't give that pick. I think it'd probably be more like the Penguins receive a pick or there's no pick at all involved in the deal. Next trade, Bobby McMannon, a 5th to Edmonton for a 2nd. I mean, based off these other moves, maybe there is a log jam in the bottom 6, but I kind of like Bobby McMannon as a player, and I think he's kind of a type of guy the Leafs need. But also trading him for a 2nd wouldn't be the end of the world. I just don't know why the Leafs would want a 2nd now, because it's not like you're really waiting for draft picks to develop, So it would probably just be flipped in another trade. Next move, Joseph Wool and Alex Steeves and a 4th to Philly for Sam Urson, Noah Cates, and a 2nd. Philly needs a goalie, so yeah, I mean, Wool was a starting caliber goalie this year. If he can maintain that, I think that'd be good for Philly. But personally, I don't think he'll maintain that, or I don't think he'll be good enough to carry a whole NHL starter load for himself. But it is an upgrade for Philly, nonetheless. I think there have been a lot of rumors about Cates leaving. I mean, Frost is gone too. I think Philly's kind of trying to retool right now around some other pieces that they have, especially like Mitchkov. They also have a high pick this year, so if you're Toronto, getting Cates and a 2nd for Wool, Steves, and a 4th. I think that's a good return for Toronto, but I also think that might be a bit of an overpay. I don't think the Leafs would get that much in return, especially not a 2nd. It'd probably be more like a 4th or something. Next trade, though, Max Domi and a 3rd to the Islanders for J.G. Pajot. Domi kind of had a down year, but I think overall in the playoffs, I'd say he was pretty good. He was solid. He had a few bad games, but he also had some big goals. I know he had that one overtime goal against Ottawa in the first round.
Also talking about players with grit on the Leafs, I feel like Domi is one of the more grittier players they have, along with Tanev. So, I mean, that would kind of be difficult losing that grit in their roster.
Yeah.
But
I mean, what are you getting in Pajot? You're getting a 32-year-old center signed for one more year. I mean, half a point per game is pretty solid. It's good depth. I think he'd be a good 3C in this scenario, but also paying $5 million for your 3rd-line center might be a little much. And but again, Domi hasn't played great, and I think they did just sign him to a fresh extension. So he's got 3 more years after this year, which I don't really know if you'd want to keep him around for that. And Islanders are kind of trying to retool anyways, so maybe Domi and a 3rd is not the worst trade. I think it's pretty even. I think it's doable for both sides.
Now, for this Montreal trade, I do think that Toronto would be overpaying a little bit for Kirby Dach. Yes, he has shown some upside in his career, but he also is very injury prone, and I think that could just be risky giving up a 2nd, a high pick like that for a player that has been inconsistently injured throughout his career at a young age as well.
Yeah, I think Kirby Dach would probably be more of a target for a retooling team. And I mean, this team with Pajot, you re-sign Tavares. I mean, why do you need Kirby Dach? Why do you need another center? You already have Matthews, Tavares, and Pajot. And they put him in at 2C. I think Tavares would slot in at 2C. Dach is more of a 3C. And then at that point, why do you even have Pajot at all? I don't think you really need a trade.
It's a lot of money in your centers there. So
yeah, and giving up a 2nd for him. I mean, Matt Benning's whatever. I think Montreal has cap space though, and they wouldn't just dump him just to dump him. Maybe the 2nd they'd take, but I just don't think Toronto would pay that price, especially on this roster specifically. I just don't really think that's worth it for them.
Kind of a bad trade around, honestly.
Yeah, and then we already looked over this Buffalo trade.
Check out the roster here.
Yeah, so the final roster, Nyes, Matthews, Marchand. It's a good first line. Tavares, Dach, Nylander. Kind of just set our piece on that. So, 3rd line, Cates, Pajot, Easton Cowan. I think it's Easton Cowan's time to come into the NHL. I think middle 6 is probably where he'll end up. I think 3rd line would be a good sweet spot for him to maybe find his game in the NHL and not be thrusted into too high of a role with too much responsibility at such a young age. I like that 3rd line though. I think that's good depth. I just don't know how good they'd be in the playoffs. But Pajot's a big playoff game guy. I remember in 2017 against the Sens, as a Pens fan, he had a few big goals in that series for the Sens. So, and then fourth line, Brandon Tanev, Scott Lawton, Elmer Soderblom. I mean, that's a pretty big line, big physical line. That's good. I think that'd be good in the playoffs. I think it'd be helpful for the Leafs. Grit and sandpaper. Poulin and Lorentz as extras. I mean, I think Poulin would just probably end up in the NHL unless he does something outstanding in camp. AHL. And Lorentz, Lorentz is fine. He could slot in for injuries or whatever. The defense.
Again, we didn't see much addition there other than Byram, which honestly, I don't mind that addition. And I understand why you would flip Sandy Pellikka for him because he is a bit older, has more experience. But, I mean, I also do think Sandy Pellikka is just a very valuable player to have on your roster. That's a guy that could easily skyrocket. He has shown lots of potential. But, I do also like Bowen Byram as a player. He's a two-way defender, can be a big threat to opposing teams.
Mm-hmm. And he's ready. I mean, Sandy and I think you'd maybe have to wait one more year or if
two even.
Maybe not quite two. I think at this point it's probably more like one, but even then,
he's playing at a high caliber level.
Yeah, he won't be good right away. Yeah. I think he'll need time to develop. Although I think he's been playing in the SHL against like grown men, so maybe he'd be more ready than someone who's kind of just been in like the CHL this whole time against younger guys. But I think Byram's a good piece. He's young. You could sign him long term. He's got a lot of potential. That's a guy, if he works out, like you could build your decor around.
And on top of that,
they get younger. Their decor's old.
For 7 years, that's 6.7. I like that a lot, contract-wise. That is a great deal to have. That is a player that could turn into, not to reference NHL video game, but I could see him turning into an 89, 90 overall defenseman. So, good production from a guy like him, too.
Yeah. And then the goalies, the goalies weren't great to begin with, and they get worse. So, I think Urson's been pretty bad in Philly, but he is only 25, so maybe there is some untapped potential there. You never know.
And with Stolarz breaking down in Game 7 like he did against Florida,
I wasn't playing.
That was Wool?
Yeah, it was Wool.
Damn,
Stolarz was injured.
Because I know Stolarz did have a great first round. I saw that he had 2 shutouts, I believe, in that series. Could be wrong about that. You might want to fact check me, but
yeah. So those are 3 different Leafs rosters. I think it's interesting to see kind of all the potential moves they could make for a team in the position that they're in. I think it's a big offseason coming up for them. And there's a lot of potential things they could do. In all these rosters, they lost Mitch Marner. They didn't re-sign him, which I think is the realistic thing that's going to happen. So kind of seeing how, Leafs fans want their team to approach building the roster without Marner and kind of filling that hole that he leaves is interesting to see, while also kind of making the depth better. I just think the big thing with all these rosters is the goaltending. I really don't see the Stolarz-Wool tandem being as good next year as they were this year. But again, we could totally be proven wrong on that, and they could just be absolute studs. So it's kind of hard to say because goaltending is really streaky and fluky, so you can't really predict it, right? So,
even with Hellebuck, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's the prime example right there.
Exactly. You never know what you're gonna get out of a goalie. Regular season or playoffs, it's totally unpredictable.
It's like Matt Murray overtaking prime Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah.
2016, going on back-to-back cup runs after that. So
yeah.
Just some goalies will have their moment, Same with Jordan Binnington, 2019 St. Louis Blues playoff run.
Exactly.
Kid was a rookie, wins a cup. How often do you see that?
Just like Matt Murray 3 years before that. So goalies can kind of come out of nowhere, steal the show, and then within a few years fall off with no explanation for it. So, but yeah, that's going to do it for today's video, fellas. Appreciate y'all tuning in.
Hope you guys enjoyed this. Please let us know in the comments if there's other rosters you'd like to see, other teams.
And what you think of the moves, and if you think, our assessment of them is pretty fair or not. I'd say we're open to criticism. Not going to take it personally. So, yeah.
So, thank you, fellas. Have a good one.
Yeah. Peace.